pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Approve the agenda is printed. Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Stacy, you want to talk about the rates or who?
Yes, sir. If you look in your packet, put in the town council resolution that was adopted by the town council. Welcome, Ms. Connie, town clerk. He said starting in October that, I guess the town has agreed to start going back to this 5-year plan, raising the water rates. As you can see, it's going to go by the CPI. There's a couple of different caveats in there. October of 23, it would be the CPI or 3%, which is ever greater at the beginning. Board knows now that we are in an interlocal agreement with White, we would, if Kirby and Kraft agree, I'd like to adopt this. Obviously, raise Ellisville rates to match Fort White's, and Fort White's going to go to adopt this.
Is the Ellisville water rates up to Fort White yet?
Yeah, currently.
Residential, not commercial.
Not commercial.
But if you know, the last automatic raise in this resolution is this year.
Right.
So after this October, no longer is it effective.
So they'd have to come up with another one next.
Well, or either the utilities have to come up.
Yes, sir.
Our proposal would be if you do this in Fort White, do it again in Ellisville.
Stacy, explain that one more time now. In October, it says 2% greater, whichever is greater, 3 or whichever is greater, 2% get October first.
Yes, sir. It says October 1st of 2023, CPI or 3%, whichever is greater in October.
Explain the CPI.
Consumer price index, inflation. Yes, sir. So I'd have to look up exactly what the number is right now.
We don't know what that's gonna be in October.
So based on the Public Service Commission,
Yeah.
their calculations of CPI had been really about 1.5% until the last 2 years, and it went to 4%. And then you adopted CPI for the Consumer Price Index as a part of our index adjustments for private utilities. And this year it's 7.07%.
Yes.
Now, I don't know what it'll be in October. We're just using the state to set the CPI and go with their recommendations.
Let's call for a vote to approve the minutes of the last meeting. I get a motion to approve the minute.
I've got a question.
Okay.
For our conversation a couple of weeks ago, the Lake City Reporter came out that said that it was a unanimous decision by the board to go forward with the regional. It was a little misleading because there was two members that was absent there, and I didn't vote on it. So it wasn't a unanimous decision, as you and I had talked about. And I talked to the reporter, and he said he got the information from the web. So I don't know how information is getting put out, but that was factually incorrect.
I did ask the question, and if you're gonna abstain, you have to announce that you're gonna abstain.
Right. Otherwise, it's a yes.
And if you don't announce that you're going to abstain, when you don't vote no, it's automatically a yes, is what I was told. So, and if you abstain from voting, you have to give a legitimate reason why you're abstaining from voting, or you have to vote anyway. If it's not you don't have some kind of conflict, you either have to vote one way or the other.
Okay.
That is the ruling that I was told when I asked that question. Now, am I right, David, or anybody?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't bring that statute this morning, but we can get from the supervisor of elections, the conflict card that needed to be completed and filed. If a matter's inuring basically to your financial interest or that of your immediate family or company that you own, then basically you need to abstain. Otherwise, you need to be voting if you're here.
Okay.
So like Ray said, what I was told is you're required to vote unless you have a conflict, one way or the other. And if you don't vote,
And that's the whole
it's not
county
making a
business.
difference.
Typically, the absence of voting counts as a yes in most boards, unless you have a specific policy stating otherwise.
So do we have a specific policy stating otherwise?
You've not,
Well, we've got a Florida statute.
Okay.
We've got a Florida statute that requires you to vote and abstain only in the instances prescribed by statute, which I briefly summarized. And I can bring that statute to the meeting next time and pass it out so everybody can see. One of the things that, and I don't know the full flavor of Columbia County at this point, but if we've got a Florida statute that's plain Jane, you can read it, you can understand it, I can understand it, Kevin can understand it, Stacy can understand it. We need to go with that Florida statute. We don't really need to make up our own rules.
No, I agree.
So that's it. But we can get that conflict card ready for you for the next meeting.
But that was one of the other thing I had was in the budget request. There was it didn't show any revenues in here. It was just all costs, or we not?
On
not understanding
on all the budget requests that we do for the county, it don't show revenue.
It doesn't.
No, it just shows, I'm not familiar with any shows any revenues. Now, if you go to the TDC meeting, they show the revenues at the TDC meetings and stuff, but our budget is just basically operating costs of what it costs to operate each department.
now we have the ability to run revenues as well.
Right.
At the board's first meeting in August, you're going to get a presentation by our auditor that, of what our audit is, followed up by a presentation on the county's overall revenue picture. And we do have a revenue picture for next year for the utility. That's why we wanted to decide on the rate issue, because that affects what next year's revenues will be.
Sure.
But we can get that anytime you want it. We can run a printout of the revenues budget versus actual, and you can see where we're at. So it's actually in our computer portal, there's a report we run. You just tell it to run the report.
Right. Maybe I'm out of line, but I think coming from the corporate world, when we started any kind of new function, we knew what our operating costs projected was going to be. And I messed around and asked the question at the Fort White City meeting Monday. And I got a song and a dance, Mr. Bailey. I appreciate your input, but wasn't really.
I'll address that in a minute.
It didn't answer any question, but I'll get off that. I know.
Well, I'll be honest. The revenue straight from the system itself do not pay for the operational cost of the utility. It is still being subsidized.
And
If you count in debt service and all the other stuff, the
And
utility is definitely being subsidized.
I've got people, neighbors that know I'm on the utility board and asking questions, and I don't have answers for them about where all this money's coming from. And at what point does it benefit people around where I live?
Well, I think when you look at revenue too, you've got to look at a bigger picture, because if you look at revenue in Ellisville, you go, that utility was costing us $250,000. But the benefit we got from that didn't directly come from the utility. We got almost $750,000 in new gas tax. Now that's two different buckets of money, so the utility lost money, but it allowed for new gas tax revenue to come in to the transportation fund. So you can't just look at the utility directly when you look at benefits to the county.
you
I get
Your
that.
benefits, also your ad valorem and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So,
So I guess from my perspective, and I'm just talking as the county manager, I'm not doing anything else. We went down this path because of the water quality issue. We wanted to make sure to improve the water quality issue in Fort White because we were told the schools had to bring in bottled water. The water was colored. It just wasn't really good water quality. And so our primary driving force in entering the utility with the town of Fort White is to get you better quality water. Part of the reason we're building the water line from Ellisville to Fort White is to get you better quality water. So that to us was our primary focus in moving forward with this project. Having said that, the Fort White utility obviously wasn't making money. That's why they did that study with the Florida Rural Water where they said, we got to raise rates every year for the next 5 years because we're not breaking even. So we're trying to get the utility into a place where you have good quality service and we can get closer and closer to breaking even, but we're not to that point yet. And like I said, we still have that 5th year of the 5-year plan of raising rates. A couple of years, the town chose not to raise the rates. So according to the Florida Rural Water, we're not where the town thought they wanted to get to yet anyway. So we're working in that direction. So I guess the benefit to the people in the town of Fort White is water quality.
Well, excuse me, I don't live in the town of Fort White. I'm a county resident. And what's really got people talking is they've seen in the paper about regional utilities. And want to know what that's gonna cost. How's that gonna affect me? I understand about, and I'm all for the sewer and the water, but at what cost? We need to know what the cost is.
Absolutely.
well, I don't know that you can give an exact cost to right now, but, it will be,
Beneficial later,
uh,
a lot beneficial later.
yeah,
I get it.
and really, the goal of a utility is basically to, basically break even and have a little money for expansion. So the cost is gonna be what cost of the utility is to operate. But I think we all agree, maybe not everybody, but I think my thought is you probably ain't gonna break even with this utility for 5 to 10 years down the road.
If it-
And let me say one more thing, again, I don't need to take over the meeting. And some of the confusion is there's 2 different concepts out there. I mean, we've got the utility we always talked about, which was the town and the county forming a regional utility of just the town
Right.
and the county. Now you got this other one out there that says there's 4 or 5 counties that want to form a regional 4 or 5 county utility. Very, very different things. So the reason the town and the county wanted to form a utility of the town and the county was so that this group could start making the decisions, or whatever group becomes that entity, of how to run the utility, how to set the rates, and sort of remove as much of the politics out of it as possible and get better quality in South Columbia. If you're talking about the 5 county regional utility, that's a whole different scenario that we're just now looking at. I think at the last meeting, they asked for us to hire somebody, try and get a grant to hire somebody to actually do a study to see financially does it even make sense or what the contribution
See, I
would
was
be.
at the,
But it's very easy for the public to get confused about which we're talking about, because I get confused about which we're talking about.
And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, wastewater, treating wastewater, whether it be on a septic tank, sewer system, whatever, it's gonna go up. Because it's Clean Water Act, Florida's, with the septic tank programs and all. Standard in-ground septic tanks, in 5 years, is gonna be a thing of past. Even if you have a standard in-ground septic tank, you're gonna be upgraded to some kind of nitrogen reduction system. And that upgrade is gonna require yearly permits, it's gonna require, monthly maintenance. I mean, it's all gonna go up. I'm just telling you, because that's where it's headed in Florida right now. Right now, already, if you're on a 1 acre lot or less, you're doing that. So
supposed to, yeah.
you're supposed to, if you put it in, you go do it now. It's law. So, and they're gonna That's why they're pushing this septic and sewer, because even if you, and I say 5 years down the road, might be 6, 7, but they're gonna put these nitrogen reduction systems everywhere. Might be, they're looking at some retrofits, but where you can kind of turn your existing septic tank into a nitrogen reduction system. But it's gonna cost you an operating permit a year, you're gonna have pump outs per year, and you're gonna have maintenance contracts.
I think that some of the public hears some of this though, and because of things that have happened in the past, in their mind, they think we're gonna run sewer and water in front of their house and say, force them to pay money to hook up. And that's not the goal of this. The goal of Fort White was because Fort White had bad water quality. We were in a position to help them. And by doing that, we should, have a stake in the wastewater, in the water system down there. And, those Fort White residents are county residents too. So we owe that to them to make sure their water quality is good. The goal everywhere else was to do exactly what happened in Ellisville. If we get water out to the mega site, and even though it cost us money on the utility side of things, if we get companies out there to increase the tax revenue, and it's a net gain, even though it's not in the same bucket necessarily, it's still it's a good return on investment for taxpayers.
And we're trying to concentrate on mostly commercial areas right now in the county.
And so maybe this committee and maybe government and the press does not do a good job of getting that message out that, hey, we're not in this to, run lines in front of everybody's house and create a revenue stream. We're in this for very specific reasons, that ultimately benefit the taxpayer.
Right now, really, we're focusing on commercial and environmental sensitive areas that we're gonna be mandated with the state to deal with anyway at some point.
So everybody reads about the B maps and all the new requirements and regulations. Every time the B maps change, every time they change those regulations, that affects how you can treat wastewater and the cost of treating it.
Septic tanks, that's just, like I say, I'm in septic tank business. It's nitrogen reduction system. They had PFA areas inside the basins. That's what they were gonna concentrate on. Well, that lasted, 2 years? Now the whole basin. If you're in a BMAP, you gotta do it. You gotta do that nitrogen reduction system. It was just the primary focus area. Now it's the whole basin.
Here in South Columbia County.
Yeah.
B map.
Yeah.
Oh, they put money in about 12 years ago. So,
Yeah. So,
and it would have had that basin in it, but
yeah, you're in the
I'm
basin
just
now.
saying
Yeah.
that.
Right.
between the articles that's coming out and the lack of clear direction, one of my neighbors asked, well, was that 12-inch main coming by our house? So what 12-inch main? The one that's going to Ellisville.
It's going down 18. Yeah.
I don't know where you get your information from. I don't know nothing about it. Call Rocky Ford. But,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve, man.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed last time? Motion carried.
Get their information from Facebook.
Yeah, a lot of them do. Yeah. Okay, we got more discussion on the rates. Everybody pretty much clear on that, I think. All right, North Florida Mega Industrial Park, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The last meeting, I was given an update, and at that particular time, I guess there was a misunderstanding with regards to the city and the county working together to provide water and wastewater hookups out to Megaplex. As you can see, I printed off the front page of the Lake City Reporter in the records. Mr. Dial has agreed to give us permanent hookups to the water and wastewater. So that issue has been resolved. I just kind of want to give everybody an update.
We think. We sent Mr. Dial a letter. Saying, okay, you said in the paper, all's good. When are we gonna do it? And we're waiting to hear.
Well, give us an update on where we at with the treatment plant. Everything's still going good with that?
Everything's going at 4:30, 4 o'clock this morning, they started pouring the foundation for the chlorine contact tank and go vertical. We'll get it up to 9 feet, seal it, pressure tested, or leak tested, and then we'll start moving. We'll stay digging the pond. Surveyor should be on site to get us some good grade shoots Monday. We're moving well. Imprint's doing well, Wardsmith's doing well.
And, I noted on our regular meeting schedule for Thursday, we got the GMP for 3 on that. Is that,
Yeah, that will conclude all the paperwork as related to the funding.
that's the final
That
track.
makes you a whole.
That makes it all right.
As Stacy indicated, on the operational side, it's going well, so we got a construction manager at risk on site, so theoretically, you know exactly what you get, you know exactly what you're paying for what you get.
August 7th, so now that we've moved into this, they've been working out there for approximately 4 or 5 months. Everything's going well. Now we've actually got temporary trailers put in place. So the next together meeting, instead of virtual meeting, it will be on site on August 7th at the Megaplex. Warren Smith, just conducting a status update.
And, the governor signed our grant for the water, so,
Just waiting for documentation.
wait for documentation. Yeah. Any other questions on wastewater treatment? Mega industrial park?
We'll do an addition on tomorrow's board agenda for updates from this committee and let you, let the rest of the board know.
What about wastewater treatment plant? Who's gonna talk about it? Greg, do you want to start or?
I can start with that. As Carl mentioned, we did present information to the panel at their meeting Monday night. And I put a map in front of the guys, presented them with a few changes. Yesterday, we evaluated additional data that we've been working on, a few tweaks on it, but basically the service areas are all the same. The lift stations, a little bit one way or the other there, just to better fit in the topography and the within the town there. But just to kind of give everyone an update. Fort White sits, as everybody knows, at the intersection of Highway 47 and US 27, two DOT sanctioned highways. So they that kind of creates a cross in town, and it kind of creates barriers in there. So we kind of looked at it from standpoint in this drawing here. You got the peach area. We look at it as a zone. We got the blue area. We look at it as another zone, and then we got the yellow area as another zone. So at the top there, you'll see lift station, what we call lift station number 1. The proposed location for that lift station is on a town-owned parcel there. That parcel is where the Department of Health is situated, but the parcel's owned by the town. It's right there next to the fire station. So that would allow us to centrally collect all the effluent in that northwest quadrant and then be able to pump it to the wastewater plant from there. The black lines you see is our anticipated gravity collection system. We had a meeting with the mayor and Ms. Connie a few weeks ago. You'll see parcels 1 and 2. They asked that we include that. They had some potential development looking at that area for businesses. So they want to try to include that. So we're evaluating that part of it. But the lift station would then sit right there on the north side of Dorch Street, and then it would pump south and down 47 to the wastewater treatment plant. The lift station number 2 is down there in the blue area. That's in there behind the subway. It is it's a platted street, but it's not a constructed street in there. The only facility that sits in that right of way is the trail project, the Greenway Trail. The Greenway Trail sits to the north side of that right of way, so we think there's enough right of way to be able to squeeze that in on the south section of that, right of way. Again, it's right of way, it's town right of way, so it would not require additional property acquisition. That force main coming from lift station 1 does not go into lift station number 2. We're anticipating right now that we would manifold all these together and just carry it on to the wastewater plant on the south side of town. Moving over to the yellow, we initially had it located up on Ellis Street in an unplatted right of way. Yesterday, Connie and the mayor hadn't seen this yet, or the town council, but we need to run it by them. But our opinion, after we evaluated the Ellis Street right of way, because in Ellis Street, we have actually a constructed street, plus we have the Greenway Trail in that right of way. So it got real tight in there. When we started looking at the other utilities in the area, we think it would be better to move it down to the U-line. And that's in an unplatted, a platted right of way, but a non-constructed right of way. So there's nothing in there, no Greenway Trail, nothing else. But it would be right on U-line Street, which would also set us up to, in the future, we anticipate we could very easily have a lift station on County Road 18, and we could shoot right across 27 and tie into that force main, again, carrying it on down to the wastewater plant. So we're looking at that being these 3 areas being kind of the first phase, with the caveat that we're concerned about the construction cost of everything that we've got. The reason you get me today, and we don't have Brian and Ricky here, is they're going to a meeting with DEP in Tallahassee today and talk about the 2 grants. The town has the first grant, which is about $5.3 million. The second grant, we're working on the paperwork. It's been awarded. We just got to get all the paperwork, the DEP satisfaction to get that awarded, and that's another 4.6, I think it is. And what Brian's going to talk to DEP is, can we kind of run these 2 grants concurrently and, do all this work at one time rather than having to do a contract for one and then come back to a contract for the other. Internally, we've been talking about what we probably want to set up is a contract to do the wastewater plant and a contract to do the collection system, and run 2 different contracts, separate that work out to hopefully get 2 different contractors that can work at the same time and not have to have one doing one and then doing the other kind of thing. So that's kind of where we're at. As Mr. Carl mentioned, he asked about the operational cost of all that. You touched on a lot of stuff. For us, it's, we got to know what our service area, what we're going to collect. If your bill's $10 and I was expecting $100, that's a big difference. So once we kind of get all this, everybody on the same page, so to speak, then we can assess what the collection would be, or anticipate what it would be with some accuracy.
Well, you have water back.
And then now that we've got what the rates are going to be, there's been some discussion on rates, on following them or not following them. So once all that, that dust kind of settled, now we can more accurately define what that is. I will tell you generally, if Fort White was doing it on their own, it would probably be difficult to make it pay for itself. As stated here, utilities, when you're starting out, you've got supplemental. With the county and the town working together, one of the advantages to this concept that we're working with here, whether it be town and county or the other counties, is you spread those costs out, so you reduce them. Each plant, if it was a town by themselves, they'd have to have an operator that's going to be their job. But with the county involved in it, the county's got multiple plants, so that same operator probably can handle all of the wastewater plants that the county has, and you spread that cost out. So that is a big advantage to working together. But the rates, having to know whether or not it's going to be a must hookup, as far as, from our standpoint, everybody in this area that we can serve, these, that's a requirement. And as long as we hold to that, then we can accurately predict, what the revenues will be based on those uses. Greg, I know the advantage we got is the town already has a water system in place, so we know what they're being billed for water now. And the way the sewer works is you're billed based on what your water bill is.
I know that the school is not tied into phase one.
They're not. That's too fluid. Nobody can sit here and tell me today that's a done deal. I know it's not that.
Well, I mean, even if they don't do the lift station, or if we don't take over the plan at the school, why wouldn't we not tie the school into the city system and pay?
Now, eventually that will be the case, but I don't have, that's not a definite. Y'all tell me that's what we're gonna do, and, we're setting it up to be able to hook to it, in the future, should that come about. But I can't tell that being a definite today based on the conversations I've heard. If somebody tells me different, I'll be glad.
What I can tell you is at the town of Fort White board meeting, they voted, that they were interested in working with the school district to acquire their plant. The meetings with the school district have been canceled. We hadn't had a chance to have meetings with the town of Fort White. So everyone's interested in proceeding with it. We just ain't gotten with the school district. So it's still a question.
That clears it right up, doesn't it?
Well, the issue with the
That's
school
why I
district,
don't want to tell it right out the gate.
the issue with the school district is they actually have
Being put into the system.
The way this was set up and presented to DEP originally, it was multiple phases over years.
Right.
And we're laying the groundwork to be able to expand it. Everything is set up for looking to the future. So, we've had internal discussions on how we collect the northeast quadrant.
Right.
So all that's in the works. But we were even talking about that yesterday, looking at some data of that section. And then you got the newest section where those new subdivisions are down on 27, on getting those into that system as well. That's why you missed, I think, when we first started, I kind of tweaked this a little bit from what we showed y'all Monday night. That lift station number 3. Right. We think it's better off. Yesterday, we were looking at some additional data because of the Ellis Street, the construction that's already in place. I got a street, plus I got a greenway in there, plus I got utilities. We started looking at our window to be able to put a sewer in that area. Right. And costly. So we looked at moving it down to Uline on an unplatted street, unconstructed, platted right away down there to the town road. And that would set us up to run down 18, the force main in the future, to be able to collect those subdivisions to the south of 18, in that triangle between 18 and 27, and then back up toward the school.
Now, where the elementary and the fort is, what are they using currently? They're not tied into the high school system, are they?
I believe most of them are now.
Yeah, that's that northeast section there. There's a lot of miss. I know the town has right of ways down. Is that where Martin lives? We have them lots available, the town owns as well. That could potentially come.
We're running a water main down and what's this road that runs back from 18, start with an N?
Stillman.
Stillman.
Yep.
The 12-inch water main is running back up there to run to the water plant, but the town has 3 lots running parallel to that right there. We anticipate utilizing the rest of, or part of that for running sewer at a later date as well. We've got a concept internally of what we think we can collect the school and collect that northeast quadrant in there. Right now, we just don't think we've got the money to build all that in the phase that we got so far. What we get a response from DEP, with the second phase, will dictate what we can add to. And and, be able to handle that. But the goal is yet to get all of the town of Fort White on this system. And it's being set up to do that.
So right here, page one, you got 79 connected. That's what you have to do. What I
Yes, sir.
Remember all 79.
Now, there's let me correct that, there's 79 parcels. Now, the vast majority of them have structures or have users on them, but there are a handful in there that the conversation we've had with some people in town is they're looking at combining, doing some different things. And I'll give you, for instance, like 73 and 79 on
Right.
that one parcel there.
Well, right there where you got lift station number one, that's a little, between 11 and 12, that's a little street.
There's a street that.
And there's a lot back here in that open area you got back there. I mean, wouldn't it make sense to try to tie them in too while you're, because they. I mean,
Between 11 and 12 is an unplanted right of way
Right.
that actually fits to, what's parcel number 2 has a little flag that goes in there and connects to it. And whoever divided that up,
Divided that up.
apparently they knew that, you know, they wanted to keep that access in there. And then the white one that's not numbered, is a big parcel. Can we collect those? Yeah, we
But
can.
somebody has bought that parcel too, and they're doing some clear, I mean, they're fixing to do something in there. I don't know what they're gonna do, but it's residential. I'm sure they're fixing
Actually,
to.
what did, Colin, which parcel was it? Was it 1 or 2 that you were talking about? One? We got a commercial development wants to go in there. So.
Yeah, yeah, on number one. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And number 2 is, that's the mobile home park.
And well, we're going right by it, pick up 1, so, you know, 2 can be picked up.
That's what I'm saying. Get all that in there, wouldn't you, all the mobile homes in there?
And realize this, I mean, a lot of, you know, typically the way this stuff is done is once we get the skeleton in there, when somebody goes and develops their property, the developer pays for those expenses.
Right.
Not the town, not the county, but the developer will pay for that. So, we're trying to get the main corridors covered here and get the existing residences and existing businesses that we can get to the most cost-effective way for these first phases. That's what we're trying to do.
How are you going to access State Road 47? Because, I mean, I see you got a line going behind those lots on 47.
Down Cullen.
17, yeah, okay.
If you look at
By
that,
the water plant.
Black Line, we can run to Water Plant Road, we can get to the hardware, and we can get to the mini warehouses that way. We come down Cullen, we can get to the intersection. It will require a couple little easements in there that the town will have to secure once we get to that point. But there's a window, it appears to us, to be able to do that. These are in-ground systems, so it's not something above ground. But the town would have to work with some property owners to secure some of those. But to get to the drugstore at the corner, we'd have to come down behind a couple of lots there. Church is in there, the town's park is in there, so we got some windows to be able to work with, to work around to minimize those, but those can be tweaked a little bit, but that'll get everybody in the northeast quadrant up to the mini warehouse. Now, we talked about that, and I told you I can't put it definitely in here right now, but the plan would be is that if the community is successful in obtaining the school system, we can then serve the library and stuff out of that system up there, and then that would be pumped down to one of these other lift stations. Eventually, you're going to end up converting that to a lift station. You're not going to want to run that water plant. I don't think
Question, and I don't know if it's for Greg or maybe to Stacy, but in this grant, obviously it's for the infrastructure. What about the residences? Do they pay the hookup fee or will that be?
We had this
How do you
discussion. We had this discussion, Stacy was part of it. And the town will have to decide how they want to, and the committee's going to decide how you want to do it. It's been done many different ways. All right. We just did one not too long ago, for Swanee County, and the county in that situation, they covered all the hookups up front. Now, they gave them a window. In this particular case, they didn't necessarily require hookup. Now, if we're gonna require hookup, it's a, there ain't no question about it in, as far as hooking up at that point. But what they did was they said, all right, if you hook up immediately, we'll cover the cost. If you don't hook up and you wait 12 months or our contractor's gone, then you're gonna pay to hook up. Now, the other thing what communities do, if you got somebody that is, whatever reason, being uncooperative, they still pay, they still pay as if they were hooked up anyway. They may not be hooked up, but they pay. But to me, and I don't know, our attorney can address that. My understanding is we got laws that kind of cover that as well.
Up to this point, in my experience in Clay County, I can only speak to what I know. We have not been mandatory hookup. However, that falls on the health department to require in accordance with law and regulation. Talking about the timing, we've done, I believe, 2 septic to sewers so far. And of course, those are grant-based, typically with your water management district. So on those, there's a little bit of a salesmanship going on. So let's say you're running, I don't know, let's say that there's 24 residences on a road and you're doing your septic sewer. Okay. They have the option. Yes, we will. And our cost is a reduced amount of blank and the grant and the utility covers the rest of it, or no, we won't. If they say no, we won't, that ship has sailed. Okay, and if they do have to hook up later, then they are paying a regular freight hookup later.
Yeah, that's what the grace period don't seem reasonable to me, because when the contractor gets to that lot, if they're not hooking up at that point, he's moved on. I think they missed the boat, but,
And it's,
Well, you
There's a
wasn't
certain
necessarily hooked up when that contractor was out there laying the main line, would you?
no, but when they come back to do all the connections,
Right,
they're gonna
right.
treat,
Well, that would be the-
yeah,
That would be the window.
that would be the window once he's there, yeah. But,
there's a certain amount of plumbing from the house to the line
mhm.
that's gonna have to happen for any house that hooks in.
And usually that's done by a separate contractor than the one running the main truck line.
But the way it typically operates on the construction side, one, our plans will show a connection. They will lay a tap out there for that. Whether they choose to or not, that will be in the plans. And then the contractor comes back and he does hookups on a separate operation.
I mean, the last one we did, and it was through the St. John's River Water Management District. Our utility decided that we did not want to be between the homeowner and their plumber / private utility contractor running the lateral connection. So what we said is we will do a reimbursement consistent with our grant. And so if they had a problem with running the lateral out to the point of connection, that they have that problem with it. But once it was resolved and it was done and we checked off that it was good for connection, then we did the reimbursement to the homeowner.
So basically, they hire their own contractor, technically, the utilities out of it.
Yes. So you do it a different way.
Jason, do you have any ideas on that? And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what is the connection fee from the homeowner to the main line? What's the, should be an average though?
That's going to depend, sir. That's going to be a case by case basis. Now, one thing I will say is I would like to look at the grant to verify how the grant was wrote, to ensure that it's not already set in said grant that the grant is supposed to cover hookup fees for these customers. So I want to check the grant before I speak clearly on that.
Greg, have you ever seen where you require, if the homeowner's hooking up during the construction, that they have a cost to hook up? Usually that cost is covered during construction, usually.
All the ones we've done,
Yeah.
entity has covered those
I
costs.
mean, everything I've been involved in with that, because I've been involved in some of them, because I do abandoned the tank and all, and I would get paid
All
by
what we've
the,
done in this region have,
yeah,
the utility has covered the cost of the hookup.
that's the way I've always said.
So for instance, when we
I
had,
have heard it was done other ways, and as Mr. Grady said, they did it different over there at Clay.
so like when we did Ellisville, we used CDBG funds to offer hookups. And some people hooked up and some people didn't.
Well, I'm gonna tell you,
if you give me a contract for 100 hookups versus I'm just going out here bidding one hookup here and here and here, it's gonna be a whole lot different price, because you got mobilization, everything. I mean, if I'm there and I got 100 hookups, I'm gonna go from house to house,
It makes a difference if you make a county policy that you got to hook up.
Yeah.
The other
And then
thing,
there's no, I ain't debating it. We're not debating it.
But I think most people, if you show them the cost that they're saving to hook up at the time, especially if you're going to charge them the rate whether they hook up or not. And that's what they do with water for right now. I mean, you pay a water bill whether you use any water. Why would you not hook up if you're gonna pay a rate whether you hook up or not? Just.
Well, Rocky, you got a tap fee in some communities and also other communities.
But that's after the fact though.
And that's what breaks the camel's back there.
Yeah, but I mean, that's after the fact, like once the utility's there, like Greg said a while ago, if the utility's there, you gotta make a lot, somebody buys it and they decide they're gonna hook up, then you got that tap. Of course, I think what Greg's saying, he's gonna put taps to each property, so the tap would be there, but you still have a connection fee and everything else.
We're gonna, but
Yeah.
the infrastructure is there,
Right.
but you still charge a tap fee.
Yeah.
That is, we talked about early on, some comments about, making money and all that. Typically, utilities are cost recovery operations. They're not a revenue generator, they're a cost recovery.
And that's the way it should be. And that's how you keep the cost to the customer
Low.
low too.
Mr. Chair, if I could, this is where basically your utility director would come in and work with any engineers or other rate study specialists. We've got rate, fees, and charges on every utility, okay? You gotta charge and pay for your plant, okay? The question is, how do you pay for your lines? And you can do a model where, if you will, the homeowner, the developer pays for a great deal of that. You can also do a model where basically the utility pays for that. Okay. If you're doing that latter model, then you're getting it back later in rates from your users. So this gets into a deal where I know Mr. Roach has presented a couple of times to the different groups. He's got some expertise in the area. I'm sure that Mr. Howard has some expertise on it, but y'all have to decide how you want to do that. And certainly what Greg is speaking to is the situation where the utilities factor that in. And basically that, if you will, that line extension or that main extension, that's part of their deal. That's part of what the utility does. They get back most likely in the way that they just the rates.
From what I've studied and read, your rate should be your operation and maintenance and your cost for expansion. Is what your rate should be, or part of your cost for expansion. And maintenance, operating maintenance and a little bit for expansion. But I think what Tim was saying a while ago is your tap connection fees and all like that, that's what probably should cover your cost for expansion. Because once your utility's there, if you have somebody coming there doing a development, they're gonna pay for most of the cost for the collection lines to get to your line. You just gotta take your main trunk line to them. And in some cases, you can require them to do that too, if it's a big enough development,
Well, basically, you got a cost for the capacity. You use 100 gallons and Carl uses 200 gallons, then, your cost to provide the service to you is half of what it is to him, but you're using half the infrastructure we got in place. So as you get new people online, they're using up that capacity. We've then got to increase that capacity to be able to continue to serve and move ahead. So that's where
That rate study,
tap fees and connection fees.
and that's what I'm saying, that rate study should include that cost for expansion.
It does.
Yeah. Well,
Chair or whoever, what's the gallons per day of the school septic system?
on the school treatment plant, I think they're, what are they, 5,000 gallons?
No, I think they're like 13 when they're running, when the school's running.
What is the capacity of
That
that?
capacity, that plan is, don't put me on this, 30.
No, it's only 25% of the capacity.
At this time, Kevin.
Correct. I don't know the capacity.
Yeah,
I was told that.
they've got capacity on it. I thought you had that information.
The capacity of the facility is 24,000 gallons a day. At the last 3 months, last month, while school was in, the average over the last 3 months was 6,000 gallons a day. That's all they were using.
So basically they're a third of capacity. Yeah. Or actually 40.
About 25%, yes.
25%, yeah.
Chair, going back to your discussion you just had relevant to the line and everything, would it not be the time of the changes that's on the horizon with DEP? We're hearing that possibly going to be going here and there to get set permit. With Fort White being an environmentally sensitive area, would it not be time to put a lobbyist group together to go to Tallahassee to, being so Fort White is so sensitive, to look for funding this next coming legislative session to fund these hookups over and beyond the plant?
Well, we are doing that now. We're in the process of that right now.
The counties and the town's been doing a great job of doing that.
Yeah.
The reality of it is the town has gotten funded for 2 grant cycles. And normally we're doing part of the work now that should have been done before they were funded the first 2. The county and the town was so successful, we got grants before they even did the paperwork that DEP normally gets to do it.
And also what we're running into is the cost for treating effluent or the sewer used to be $8 to $10 a gallon, is now $30 to $40 a gallon. Cost of treatment plant. I mean, as you know, out at the big industrial park. So the grants that when we done the cost analysis for what we needed for the grant, we're behind the 8 ball now, really.
There was, Bob laid out about 9 phases, I think total close to about $50 million.
63.
63 is what it was, Stacy. DEP looked at that. They showed a lot of interest. We are we're in close proximity to Santa Fe, the Swanee, the Stutney. And so there are a lot of incentives for them to fund this. Three Rivers was part of the discussion about that. Obviously, the town is the main focus now. You got to kind of grow it and grow to that. But to answer your question is, yes, there's incentive there. I think we need to keep beating that drum, and I think.
But at the same time, we're at that point where we got to spend some money to get some stuff in the ground before they move up, before we move the needle much further up.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing, so y'all need to get something.
Well, we gave them, y'all know what you're running in with the wastewater plant out there.
Yeah, oh, I know that, and they know that too. I mean,
A system will know when they could hook up, and, we told them probably you're looking at about 36 months to actually be able to serve customers on this. Now, construction, permitting, everything else will be going on on the interim, but, that's about what it's gonna take. When the councilman asked about tearing up the streets, we're gonna obviously, put restrictions on the contract. We're not just gonna tear up the whole town at one time. So, try to keep that down. We're gonna work from zone to zone to zone, as best we can. And
well, like you said the other night, you can directional drill, force mains for gravity. Gravity's a hard thing to do with directional boring, I can tell you. Almost impossible.
Well, you don't do, you gotta do jack and bore. If you want to do line and grade, you can't do it with directional. But we think this is a great start to the overall system. We're getting the majority of the core downtown commercial areas covered in this. Plus we're getting some of the residential uses there. I will say the southwest quadrant down here, that is more the economically distressed area of town. One of the other funding opportunities we would have for that area, what we don't have it in the other parts of town, is CDBG funding for that. Because of the LMI requirement, those areas would almost be a guaranteed funding to be able to put facilities in down there.
Travis, what is Fort White's thought on the school treatment plant? Is that something y'all want to do on your own? Is that what I'm understanding? And y'all want to run that plant and try to do that on your own? Is that what?
I don't think so. Thought that was a joint venture.
Oh, and that's what I'm saying, but I guess David said the comment was made at the meeting. I wasn't there at that meeting. That the town of Fort White wanted to get with the school about the treatment plant and get to the town of Fort White.
I think he misunderstood.
Ronnie just said the mayor had mentioned at the discussion that it could be titled to the town of Fort. He didn't say not do it as a joint venture, but the property be titled to the town. I don't know that the board voted on that.
Why would it be titled to the town of Fort White then if the county is gonna get involved in it too?
I think ultimately, all of the assets, if this is moving forward as a utility, would ultimately get titled over to the utility.
Yeah, I'll belong to the utility.
If this becomes a utility authority, it would all ultimately be titled to the utility.
And Travis, you weren't at the last meeting, what Mr. Carter was talking about. At the last meeting, we voted to go ahead and try to form a utility with the town of Fort White. And basically have its own board and be an independent utility where the county would appoint members to the board, the town of Fort White would appoint members to the board, and then they'd have like members at large. And everything with the utilities would be voted on and done through that committee. Any rate study, any rate hike, what the rate should be and all would be set by that utility committee. If they wanted to do mandatory hookups or whatever, it would be done by that utility committee, not trying to go to the town of Fort White for a vote on this, get it approved, then coming back to the Board of County Commissioners, trying to get it approved. You get too much politics involved and you get too many different boards involved. And, you know, if you got a committee that don't handle anything but the utility, they can stay up to date on what's going on with that utility a lot better than 5 commissioners and 5 city council members, you know, trying to figure out how it needs to be done. Plus you'll have a director making recommendations for how they need it, you know, what the cost for the operation and maintenance actually is, what we need to, how much money we need to recover. And that's how most, I think every successful utility that I've seen and talked to the people doing it, that's how they operate the best. Is one board running that, making decisions for that utility. And that's kind of how we're looking at moving forward, and I think they're trying to put together an agreement for us to look at, maybe try to approve.
Yeah, that would make sense to more or less streamline this and get it done.
Yeah.
Well, y'all meet once a month, we meet twice a month.
Already.
It just slows everything down when you got one board meeting once a month, you got one board meeting twice a month. It just slows all the decisions down.
Yeah.
Where a committee like this here can meet every 2 weeks, or if they had to, they can meet once a week, it makes decisions to move forward.
Yeah.
And a lot of times decisions have to be made with utilities pretty quick, I think Stacy would agree to that. If you bring something to that committee, it needs to be looked at pretty quick. So, and that's one reason we started meeting every other week with this committee, But right now, it still slows it down because it's got to try to go back to Fort White and go to the Board of County Commissioners. And I think moving forward, we need to look at something like that. And that's kind of what direction we're looking at heading,
Makes sense.
I think I mentioned that to you, though. Now you thought that was a pretty good idea to do that also.
Now, would that be real quick? Would that be having Stacy as the chair of that board since he's the director of utilities?
I don't know how that would be. We don't know how that would be set up yet. But it would definitely be appointed for the town, would appoint some people, and the county would appoint people. And Stacy would be involved in it for sure. I don't know,
That's kind of what we.
chair or whatever, but yeah.
Well, I think the concept he's taught, that Rocky's mentioned is this board's independent of government. So this board is, that's, so how it's made up will be decided on the proposals we get back. Obviously, everybody have equal appointments, but it'd be independent of the government body. They would be able to make decisions on their own, however it's set up.
I'm not sure, Travis, but that director, as you're calling it, of the head of the regional, I wouldn't think that they would be, city or county employees. I think they'd be independent.
Yeah.
If you, Stacy, how often does GRU board meet?
Twice a month.
Twice a month? You owe it to yourself to drop in on one of their meetings. I was there for another reason a while back, but it is pretty neat how it's structured. And I would assume this would kind of be structured along the same lines, that regional utility.
Well, I was reading how the Okeechobee was set up and what they done. They have the city and the county involved and they have another part of another county involved. What they done, the city appointed 2 members, the county appointed 2 members, and then them 4 members voted for a member at large that had to be from that other county that's in this thing too. So they have 5. But chair, the county commission with the county appointed 2, the city appointed 2, and then them 4 got together and appointed the other person. Which they've been in operation for 30 years and everything went smooth.
Typically, your committee members are not employees.
And when it states in their agreement that the committee members cannot work for any city, county involved or, employees of that city or county. They can't be appointed, they can't be elected officials or employees of those. Of the city or
Normally,
county.
you've got the committee and then you've got an executive director. The executive director runs the day-to-day operation.
Which would be Mr. Stacy.
Long-term, a utility authority would have its own employees. So they would not be county or city employees.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And they could hire whoever they wanted.
Yeah.
You don't really want to bind their hands.
There was a discussion with the town's attorney that he was available the 11th of August. If we wanted to do a workshop, are we interested in doing that?
Oh, I think we have a meeting planned right now with the town of Fort White and the county for August the 11th.
Good.
Now, I mentioned that to Travis the other day. Have y'all talked about that now? Okay, y'all have. Yeah, so that's what I told you the other day about maybe having him at that meeting if he could be a spokesman, so he could kind of give us his perspective on how.
As I understand it, we've got 2 interlocal agreements with the town right now, speaking as the utility authority, could be either utility attorney for the county. So we have the 2 existing interlocal agreements. If you went the way Okeechobee went, and I did a lot of research on that, thank you. You've got what we call section 16301, independent special district formed by interlocal agreement. It is an authority. You've got some limitations compared to going the special act route, but it's faster. But certainly you can do that. And I would just say it is an extension of your existing interlocal relationship with the town of Fort White. The only thing that came up at what I would call the other meeting where we have the other counties represented is, if there is a strong interest with the other counties to do something sooner rather than later, and if we are going to the legislature for that, it seems to me it would be easier to go to the legislature with one game plan, and that is we've got X counties and we've got Y municipalities, and we're going to do this together, and if others in the future want to join, that's fine. And that's fairly close to what happened down in Osceola County with the Toho utility, which was formed, I believe, in 2003. And there you get a little bit stronger lien rights, get a little bit stronger eminent domain rights. arguably get a little bit better public finance authority, but I'll have to defer to the experts at PFM and some other folks like that to help us with those questions. But, I think you're asking all the right questions and you're examining all the right issues right now. Certainly, if we can work with the school district in the future, that make life easier for a lot of people.
Question on these, where would the funding come from for this special district?
So right now, the member entities would have to provide funding. And then your additional funding, of course, is self-funding from the systems that you have. Okay, so if those systems are not operating with positive net return right now, they will have to be subsidized until that utility can self-sustain.
And I think we're all aware that it's gonna have to be subsidized, start with.
It's just my business background comes out. Bottom line, money's got to come from somewhere and to be independent from county commissioners or town of Fort White. That's gonna be the first thing be agreed on is how much funding and, don't come back and, say, well, it ain't in the budget this year. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I mean, all of your successful utilities, Greg would tell you, have master plans. Usually the engineer is very big part of that. You'll have people with a finance background, an accounting background as well. So essentially, y'all need to be thinking about your own master plan, but not only for now. I'm sure Stacy's already doing it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out.
Well, since you brought that up, I know I'm not a politician, so I'm just gonna tell you how I feel. I think Mr. Stacy here, if he's our utility director, he should be a lot more involved in what's going on here. And nothing against Mr. Bailey, but instead of Mr. Bailey, driving the horse, them two need to collaborate. And we really need to get it from the utility director. Just my thought. That's normally the way you do it in the business world. It sounds like Stacy said he had to look at the grant to see if the stub outs is even covered in there. And we're talking about making a special district. I'm not sure where the mule is, where the wagon is, but just saying.
I think that's part of the discussion on the 11th.
And
Greg, do they specify in the grants how you have to, as long as you're spending on that utility, you can, about all grants cover, hookups during construction, right?
We can do hookups if that's what the group wants to do.
That's what I'm saying. That money, as long as you're spending it on that utility, on that hookup and that construction, it's not specified you can't spend money on this or that, is it? Right.
But part of the confusion is the grant is,
Have you seen grants that specify that during the construction phase of the utility? That they can't use it for hookups?
I think part of the confusion is the grants are town grants.
Mhm.
So these are grants done to the town of Fort White. So that's where some of the who's driving the horse, who's driving the cart, confusion gets involved. It's not a county grant. It's not this committee's grant. It is a town grant.
The grant is for a wastewater system to include the wastewater treatment plant and a collection system to provide service. Whatever is entailed in that the community wants to make a part of it can be done. You can't go buy a personal vehicle out of it.
Right.
Anything related to that wastewater collection system and being able to get that waste from that user to that plant, we can do. Now, I can spend a lot of money fixing your site and not doing the rest of it, or, everybody needs to decide how you want to budget that money out.
Well, and that's, like I said before, I know when the High Springs done theirs, they went in there, we abandoned, I don't know how many septic tanks. You know, after the connection, we went behind them, but they paid all, I mean, we submitted our bill to Hot Springs, you know, or to that company they had hired, but they paid it was a part of the grant funding, you know, for the abandonment of septic tank.
Like I said, the most recent one we did was for Swanee County up here at 136 and 75. And every one of those businesses got hooked up. It didn't cost them a dime to hook up. It was all covered under the grant.
I was just saying, that's what I've always, every one of them I've been involved in, it was covered by the grants.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
To get away from the stuff out of a minute, to kind of address what Mr. King's question was about the mule and wagon. I think that meeting on the 11th is so important. As you've heard here today, down Fort White, ownership, Columbia County director. We talked about a regional utility for multiple counties, regional utility for Columbia County, Fort White. In my humble opinion, I cannot imagine if this thing goes 5 county wide, that they're going to allow a director from Columbia County to be running day-to-day operations. Yeah. I mean, there's no way I would agree to that if I were representing Hamilton County, for example. I think that 11th meeting is where the water's got to get cleared up for all of this. You know, you heard everybody next to this ownership of the sewer plant. You know, I've heard town limits. I've heard, you know, does that mean, and I'm being silly here, does that mean when the water line hits the town limits in the towns? You know, that was not the intent of what we all started with.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if it's going to be Columbia County for wide utility, that's one scenario, right? There's going to be 5 counties, and that's entirely different scenario. I think it's very different. But I think Greg, you know, he spelled it out as easy as it could be, the purpose, all politics out of it. At the end of the day, you get all the politics out of it, you have to have fair representation from the board itself, the director itself. So that's why I think the significance when we met in that room a month ago, for breaking the workshop for the town and county, I think that was the whole intent. But you are correct, that based on the scenario chosen, that will determine the middle of the way.
And why wouldn't you set it up to be nimble? You know, so I can't imagine a concept where in a couple of months, we're going to invite 5 counties to join a single committee when there's nothing out there for them to have stake into it. But I think, why don't you set your initial authority up to add members as projects involved in it? So do you really have to come right out the gate with representatives from 5 counties because you think you might want to do that in the future? Or would you just come out the gate with a utility made up of the players that are involved with language bylaws that allow you to expand to pick up other counties as projects become available that involve them?
But that's basically what we're looking at.
Basically,
And you
Can be
just
done any
described
way you
exactly
want
what we're
to.
looking at. And the clause in there to add counties or add representatives and how they have to do it. So that's all in that Okeechobee agreement down there.
So it seems like it'll be a lot simpler process setting up that regional utility, you know, than, you know, what it seems like you're talking about, oh, it's gonna be a 5 county thing. Well, it's not gonna come out the gate that way.
No.
Agreed, no, it's not.
like I said, it's 2 different authority issues that you're talking about. Town and county and what our relationship is. And then the 5 county regional grant authority is a different bird altogether.
But on top of that, Toby, we're throwing solid waste in there as a potential subject, which is a complete deal changer also. And that's why I'm kind of passionate about the theory of a structure. I could, you know, it's taken us a long time to establish our solid waste facility because it is an enterprise fund. It stands on its own, it operates itself, and we don't shore it up. We need other monies. So if all that becomes a factor, you know, I met with some environmental engineers earlier this week about how that structure in other places. You know, is it actual buy-in? They just serve as a customer, et cetera, et cetera. And all that's will be part of those negotiations, in my opinion.
And you gotta look at it as 2 different terms.
I'm going to add one thing from us. I ain't running anything here. All I'm doing is providing information. I've got 5 county commissioners that I work for. I got 5 city councilmen that I work for. So whatever they ask us to do, whatever they ask us to provide, that's what we do. I am in a position where I work for Columbia, I work for Town of Fort White, I work for Swanee County, I work for Hamilton County, as far as those 5 counties that are doing the utility work, so we got a lot of information. My job is to provide the information and for the committees and those commissioners to make those decisions, to have the best information they got for that they can have. And that's what we do.
Well, I just think, like I said, if Stacy's gonna be the utility director, I guess he wants to be one of your bosses too. I don't know how else to put it, but y'all need to get together. So we do some planning and don't come to a meeting like this and say, well, I don't know.
I report to Mr. Crowe and Mr. Kirby.
Okay.
If they want me to report to Stacy, we'll be more than glad to.
Mr. Kirby and I have conflicts, so that's why he left and that's why I'm about ready to leave. Just wanted to remind you that a public comment before the end of the meeting, and if you want the water line special, you put that on the 20th. And I would encourage everybody in this board to come to the 20th meeting. It'll be right here. Not the 20th, the 11th.
11, yeah, the 11.
What time?
Right here. 9 a.m.
9?
It'll actually be a meeting of the two boards. So each board can vote on whatever they want to vote on.
Oh,
Two boards being county and city.
yeah.
County and town.
Town of Fort White.
Stacy, did you want to address the Elderville?
Hey, this was just a quick update. We've had so many questions because it's such a large project from different contractors that we pushed back the questionnaire portion of the bid out to August 1st. And the bid closing will be August 8th. I just want to give everybody an update on that. That's
Stacy wanted to change the agenda.
they approved it there. Yeah.
You approved it?
Yeah, we approved it.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, okay. So basically you just moved the opening bid date up.
Yes, moved it back a couple of weeks because
Okay.
you had to create some addendums.
Oh. Anybody got any questions on that? Public comment, anybody got any public comment? Bill, you ain't got nothing to say?
That's a first.
I ain't never. Public comment, anybody else? Anything they want to add or talk about or?
I move we adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned.